This is my true story. My daughter laughed at my bedside and said, "Mom's $185 million is mine." I was dying of cancer, and all she cared about was my money. She never asked how I felt or if I was in pain, just asked when she could access my accounts. I heard her on the phone celebrating my death before it even happened. But when my attorney opened the final file after my funeral, her face went pale. Everything she thought was hers was gone. But you won't believe what I did with it. Before that, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. And please subscribe to this channel so that my stories can reach more people. I started with nothing. Absolutely nothing. I grew up poor in a town where nobody expected anything from girls like me. My parents worked factory jobs. We lived paycheck to paycheck. I wore hand-me-down clothes and ate the cheapest food. But I was smart. Smarter than anyone gave me credit for. I got a scholarship to college, studied chemistry, worked 3 jobs while taking classes, slept 4 hours a night, graduated top of my class. And then I did something nobody expected. I started my own pharmaceutical company. Everyone said I would fail, said a woman couldn't run a business like that, said I didn't have the money or the connections or the experience. They were right about the money and connections, but they were wrong about everything else. I worked harder than anyone. I spent every dollar I had on research. I lived in a tiny apartment eating ramen. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I didn't date, didn't go out, didn't have friends, just worked. Because I knew if I didn't make it work, I would end up back in that factory town with nothing. It took 5 years before I saw any profit. 5 years of barely surviving, of maxing out credit cards, of wondering if I made a huge mistake. But then we developed our first successful drug, a medication for blood pressure that worked better than anything on the market. And everything changed. The money started coming in. Real money. Money I never imagined having. I reinvested every penny back into the company, hired better scientists, built better labs, developed more drugs, and the company grew, and grew, and grew. I got married when I was 32. Met a man who said he supported my work, said he was proud of me. We had my daughter a year later. I thought I could have it all, the business and the family. But I was wrong. My husband hated that I made more money than him, hated that I was successful, hated that I worked all the time. He started drinking, started cheating, started making my life miserable. We divorced when my daughter was 5. He took half of what I had at the time and disappeared. Never paid child support, never called her, just took the money and left. So I raised my daughter alone while running a company that was growing into an empire. I missed school plays because I had board meetings, missed birthdays because I had product launches, missed bedtime stories because I was on business trips. I hired nannies to raise her while I worked. I felt guilty about it, felt like a bad mother. But I told myself I was building something for her, building wealth that would give her opportunities I never had, building a future where she would never struggle like I did. By the time she was 18, my company was worth over $100 million. By the time she was 25, it was worth $185 million. I owned patents on 12 different medications, employed over 3,000 people, had offices in 6 countries. I built all of that. Me. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me anything. I worked for 40 years straight, sacrificed everything, my youth, my health, my relationships. All for this company, all to create wealth and security and a legacy. I gave my daughter everything growing up, everything I never had. Private schools, designer clothes, new cars, vacations to Europe, credit cards with no limits, a trust fund, an apartment in the city. She never worked a day in her life, never had to struggle, never had to worry about money. I thought I was being a good mother, thought I was giving her the life she deserved. But I was wrong. I wasn't teaching her the value of money, wasn't teaching her respect or gratitude or hard work. I was creating a monster, a spoiled, entitled monster who thought money just appeared, who thought wealth was something you were owed instead of something you earned. My daughter grew up in luxury, but she grew up empty. She had everything except character, everything except empathy, everything except love. She didn't love me. She loved what I could give her. And I was too busy building my empire to notice. Too busy working to see that my daughter was becoming someone I wouldn't even like. Someone who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. And by the time I realized it, it was too late to fix. My daughter never called just to talk. Never called to ask how I was doing or what was new in my life. She only called when she wanted something, when she needed money for a new car, when she wanted a down payment on a house, when she saw a dress she had to have, when her credit cards were maxed out. Every single phone call started the same way. Hi Mom, I need something. Not hi Mom, I love you. Not hi Mom, I miss you. Just I need. Always needing. Always taking. Never giving anything back. She didn't visit unless there was a reason. Unless I was hosting a party with important people she wanted to network with. Unless I was giving her something. Unless there was money involved. I would invite her to dinner, and she would say she was busy. But if I mentioned I wanted to discuss her trust fund, suddenly she had time. Suddenly she could fit me into her schedule. I was never a mother to her. I was a resource, a means to an end, something to be used and tolerated until she got what she wanted. I watched her grow into someone cruel, someone cold. She treated service workers like trash, yelled at waiters, snapped at retail workers, looked down on anyone who made less money than she had, money she didn't even earn, money I gave her. She acted like she was special, like she was better than other people, but she had done nothing, accomplished nothing. She was just a rich kid spending money her mother made, living off my success like a parasite. Her friends were just like her, shallow, fake, obsessed with status and appearances. They didn't have real jobs, just spent their parents' money and pretended to be entrepreneurs. They took photos for social media pretending to work hard, but I knew the truth. They were spoiled children playing dress-up, and my daughter was the worst of all of them. At least some of their parents were proud of them, bragged about them. But I had nothing to brag about. My daughter had no talents, no achievements, no character, just a pretty face and an ugly personality. She got married when she was 28, to a man just like her. Rich kid, trust fund baby. Never worked a real job in his life. He was handsome and charming on the surface, but I saw through it, saw that he was using her, saw that he was interested in my money. He asked me about my estate planning on our second meeting, asked how much the company was worth, asked if my daughter was the sole heir. I should have seen it then. Should have known they were both just waiting for me to die so they could take everything. They bought a house with money I gave them, furnished it with money I gave them, took vacations with money I gave them, and never once said thank you, never once showed gratitude, just acted like they deserved it, like it was owed to them. My daughter would post photos online of her perfect life, her perfect house, her perfect husband, her designer clothes and expensive dinners, and people would comment about how blessed she was. How lucky. But it wasn't luck. It was my money, my hard work. She did nothing but exist and spend. I tried to talk to her about it once, tried to tell her she should get a job, should do something with her life, should contribute to society. She laughed at me, said, "Why would I work when you're worth almost $200 million? Said she was already set for life, said she was just waiting for her inheritance, waiting for me to die. She actually said that, said it like it was normal, like mothers were supposed to kill themselves working so their lazy daughters could spend the money. I realized then that I failed as a mother. I gave her everything except values, everything except work ethic, everything except respect. I created a monster who saw me as an ATM machine, who counted my money while I was still alive, who looked at me and saw dollar signs instead of a person. My own daughter didn't love me, she loved my bank account, and she was just biding her time until she could have it all. I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 3 months before I died. The doctor told me I had maybe 6 months, maybe less. The tumors were everywhere. In my pancreas, my liver, my lungs. There was no treatment that would save me, just palliative care to manage the pain. I sat in that doctor's office and felt my world end. Not because I was afraid of dying, I lived a full life, built something meaningful, but because I realized I was going to die alone. My daughter didn't really love me, and I was going to face death knowing that truth. I called her from the hospital parking lot, told her I needed to talk to her. She said she was busy, had a spa appointment. I said it was important. She sighed like I was inconveniencing her. Finally agreed to meet me for lunch the next day. I sat across from her at an expensive restaurant and told her I had cancer. Told her it was terminal. Told her I had less than 6 months to live. I watched her face for sadness, for tears, for any sign that she cared her mother was dying. But there was nothing. She just nodded, said, "That's terrible." Then she asked the question that broke my heart. "So when do I get access to the accounts?" Not, "Are you in pain?" Not, "What can I do to help?" Not, "I love you, Mom." Just, "When do I get the money?" I sat there staring at my daughter and realized she was already planning my funeral. Already spending my money in her head. I told her we would discuss estate planning later. She looked annoyed, like I was being difficult, like I owed her an answer right then. She said she needed to know because she and her husband were planning investments, planning their future, a future that required me to be dead. I spent my final months in and out of the hospital. The pain was unbearable. They gave me morphine, but it barely helped. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My body was shutting down piece by piece. And my daughter visited twice in 3 months. Both times she stayed less than an hour. Both times she spent most of the visit on her phone, texting, scrolling, not even pretending to care. I tried to talk to her, tried to have real conversations, tried to connect with her before I died. But she wasn't interested. She would check her watch, say she had somewhere to be, leave me alone in that hospital room. The worst day was 2 weeks before I died. I was in the hospital, barely able to breathe. The nurses said I didn't have much time left. My daughter came with her husband. They stood at the foot of my bed. I thought maybe they came to say goodbye, to tell me they loved me, to give me some comfort in my final days. But they didn't even look at me. They were whispering to each other, laughing quietly. I heard pieces of their conversation. Her husband said they should buy a beach house in the Bahamas. My daughter laughed and said, "Once we get the money, we can buy 10 beach houses." They were planning how to spend my money, planning their luxury life, while I was dying 3 feet away from them. I asked my daughter to come closer, to hold my hand. She walked over looking annoyed. I tried to tell her I loved her, tried to have one real moment before I died. But she cut me off. Said, "Mom, we need to talk about your will. Need to make sure everything is in order. I'm your only heir, right? Everything comes to me." I stared at her. This woman I gave birth to. This woman I worked my entire life to provide for. And all she cared about was money. She didn't see a dying mother. She saw a bank vault that was about to open. I told her to leave. She looked surprised. I said, "Get out. I don't want you here." She got angry, said I was being dramatic, said she was just trying to be practical, trying to handle things. But I knew the truth. She wanted me dead, wanted me gone so she could have my money. And I decided right then that she would never see a single dollar, never benefit from my death. I would make sure of it. That night, after I kicked her out of my hospital room, I couldn't sleep. The pain was bad, but the emotional pain was worse. I kept thinking about my daughter, about how cold she was, how cruel, how she looked at me like I was already dead, like I was just an obstacle between her and my money. I felt so stupid, so blind. I spent 40 years building wealth for her, sacrificing everything, and she didn't care, never cared. I was just a meal ticket to her, nothing more. Around midnight, I needed to use the bathroom. I tried to get up, but I was too weak. I pressed the call button for the nurse, but nobody came right away, so I just laid there, helpless, dying, alone. And that's when I heard voices outside my room. My daughter's voice. She didn't leave. She was still at the hospital, talking on her phone in the hallway. I heard every word through the thin door. She was talking to someone, maybe a friend, maybe her husband. She was laughing. Actually laughing. She said, "Mom's finally dying." Can you believe it? I've been waiting for this for years. The voice on the other end said something I couldn't hear. Then my daughter said, $185 million. All mine. I'm done pretending to care. Done pretending to be sad. The second she's gone, I'm getting everything. We can finally live the life we deserve. The other person said something else. My daughter laughed again. She said, "I know I should feel bad, but I don't." She was never really a mother anyway. Always working, always busy, She doesn't deserve sympathy. She chose money over me my whole life, so now I'm choosing money over her. It's only fair." Then she said the worst part. She said, "Honestly, I'll be relieved when she's gone. No more hospital visits. No more pretending. Just freedom and money. So much money." I laid in that hospital bed listening to my daughter celebrate my death, listening to her laugh about it, listening to her reduce my entire life to a dollar amount. Something inside me broke. Not my heart. That was already broken. Something deeper. My spirit, maybe. The part of me that still hoped she had some good in her, some love, some humanity. But there was nothing. My daughter was empty inside, rotten, and I created her. I raised her to be this way by giving her everything and teaching her nothing. The nurse finally came, helped me to the bathroom, helped me back to bed, asked if I was okay. I said no, said I needed to make a phone call. She brought me my phone. I called my attorney at midnight, woke him up. He answered confused, asking what was wrong. I told him I needed to change my will, needed to do it immediately, tomorrow. He said we could wait until I was feeling better. I said no. There is no better. I'm dying, and I need to do this now before it's too late. He came to the hospital the next morning, brought all the paperwork, brought a notary, brought witnesses. I was barely conscious, but I knew what I was doing, knew exactly what I wanted. I told him to remove my daughter from everything, every account, every trust, every single asset. He asked if I was sure, asked if I wanted to leave her something small. I said no, nothing. She gets nothing. He asked what I wanted to do with the money instead. I told him I wanted it to go to cancer research, to the foundations fighting the disease that was killing me. I wanted it to go to women's shelters, to help women escape bad situations and build better lives. I wanted it to go to scholarship funds, to help poor kids like I was get educated and have opportunities. I wanted my money to help people who deserved it, people who needed it, people who would use it to make the world better, not waste it on beach houses and designer clothes and fake social media posts. My attorney wrote everything down, prepared new documents. I signed every page. The notary witnessed it. The witnesses signed. It was legal, binding, ironclad. My daughter thought she was inheriting $185 million. But she was getting nothing. And she had no idea. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Smiled knowing that her greed would be punished, that her cruelty would cost her everything. My daughter thought cancer made me weak, thought the pain and the drugs made me confused, thought I was too sick to think clearly. She treated me like I was already brain dead, like I couldn't understand what was happening around me. But she was wrong. My body was dying, but my mind was sharp. Sharper than ever, actually. Facing death has a way of making everything clear, making you see people for who they really are. And I saw my daughter perfectly, saw her greed, saw her cruelty, saw exactly what she was planning. She had no idea I heard her that night in the hallway. No idea I knew she was celebrating my death. She came back to visit me a few days after I changed my will, acted concerned, asked how I was feeling, brought me flowers. But I saw through it, saw the fake concern, saw her checking her watch, saw her counting down the days until I died. She thought she was fooling me, thought I was too weak to notice. But I noticed everything. My attorney became my partner in this, my co-conspirator. He understood why I was doing it. He had seen cases like this before. Children who showed up only when money was involved. Children who drained their parents and then celebrated when they died. He said my daughter was one of the worst he'd ever seen. Said most people at least pretended better, at least faked grief. But my daughter didn't even try. She was too confident, too sure she would get everything. And that confidence would be her downfall. We spent weeks making sure everything was perfect, every document reviewed, every signature verified, every legal requirement met. We made backup copies, filed everything properly, made sure there was no way to contest it, no loopholes, no mistakes. My attorney said it was the most airtight will he ever created, said my daughter could hire 100 lawyers and none of them would break it. The money was going exactly where I wanted it, and there was nothing she could do about it. I also wrote a letter, a personal letter to my daughter. My attorney suggested it, said it would help me say everything I needed to say, Everything I couldn't say to her face. I spent hours writing it, crossing out words, rewriting sentences. I wanted it to be perfect, wanted every word to hit her like a hammer, wanted her to understand exactly why she was getting nothing, wanted her to know that I knew, that I heard her, that I saw who she really was, and that she disgusted me. The letter wasn't long, just 1 page, but every sentence was brutal, every word was true. I didn't hold back, didn't soften anything. I told her she was a disappointment, told her she failed as a daughter, told her she was greedy and cruel and heartless, told her I was ashamed I raised her, told her the money she thought she would inherit was going to strangers who had more character in their little finger than she had in her entire body. I signed it, sealed it, gave it to my attorney, told him to give it to her after I died, after she learned she got nothing, so she could read it and understand. My daughter kept visiting during my final weeks, not often, but enough to maintain appearances. She would sit by my bed and talk about nothing, about her life, her plans, her husband. Never asked about my pain, never asked what I needed, just talked at me like I was furniture. Sometimes she would take selfies with me in the background, post them online with captions about how hard this was, how she was staying strong for her mom. People commented with prayers and hearts, told her she was a good daughter. She ate it up, loved the attention, loved playing the devoted daughter role. But it was all fake, all performance, and I saw through every second of it. Then something miraculous happened. A week before the doctors expected me to die, I woke up one morning feeling different. The pain was less. I could breathe easier. The doctors ran tests, ran more tests. They couldn't believe it. The tumors were shrinking, rapidly. They called it a spontaneous remission, said it was incredibly rare but not impossible, said my body was somehow fighting back. Within 2 weeks I was stable. Within a month I was improving. Within 3 months the cancer was in complete remission. I wasn't dying anymore. I was living. But I didn't tell my daughter, didn't tell anyone except my attorney, because I wanted to see what she would do, wanted to see how she would act at my funeral, wanted to watch her perform grief while celebrating inside, so we staged it. My attorney helped me plan everything. We faked my death, filed false paperwork, planned a funeral, sent out announcements, and I disappeared. Moved to a private medical facility under a false name to continue treatment and recovery. And I watched from afar as my daughter prepared for the payday she'd been waiting for. My funeral was 3 days after my supposed death. Small service. Not many people came. I didn't have many friends, spent my whole life working. My employees sent flowers, business partners sent cards. But the only family there was my daughter and her husband. She wore a black designer dress that probably cost $5,000. Huge sunglasses hiding her eyes. She dabbed at her face with tissues, but I doubt there were real tears. Her husband wore an expensive suit. They stood in the front row looking somber, looking like grieving family. But I knew better. Knew they were probably planning their celebration dinner. After the funeral, my daughter asked the attorney when they could meet about the estate. She didn't even wait until we left the cemetery. Just walked right up to him at the burial site and asked. He told her he would schedule something for the following week. She looked annoyed, said she thought it would be faster. He said these things take time, need to follow proper procedures. She rolled her eyes but agreed. Told him to make it soon. She had plans, had things to do, had a life to live. A life funded by my money, or so she thought. The reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday, 10 a.m., at my attorney's office downtown. Big mahogany desk, leather chairs, wall of law books, the kind of office that looked expensive and serious. My daughter showed up 15 minutes early. She wore all black again, playing the grieving daughter role. But she was smiling. Actually smiling, couldn't even hide it. Her husband was with her. They sat in the waiting area scrolling through their phones, looking at real estate websites probably, looking at cars and boats and all the things they were about to buy. My attorney called them into his office at exactly 10. They sat across from him. My daughter crossed her legs and leaned back in her chair, completely relaxed, completely confident. Her husband had his arm around her. They looked at each other and smiled, Looked like they won the lottery. In their minds, they did. $185 million. More money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes, and all they had to do was wait for me to die. Which I did, right on schedule. My attorney opened his briefcase, pulled out a folder. Thick folder, lots of papers inside. My daughter leaned forward, eyes on that folder like it was treasure. Her husband squeezed her hand. My attorney put on his reading glasses, cleared his throat, asked if they wanted water or coffee. My daughter said no, said let's just get to it, let's go over the estate. Her voice was excited, eager, like a kid on Christmas morning. She couldn't wait to hear how rich she was, couldn't wait to get her hands on my money. My attorney opened the folder, started with the standard introduction, talking about the estate, about my assets, about the total value. He said $185 million. My daughter smiled bigger. Her husband whistled quietly. My attorney continued, said the estate included bank accounts, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, and the pharmaceutical company. My daughter nodded along. Yes, yes, yes. She knew all this. Wanted him to get to the part where he said it all belonged to her. He shuffled through some papers. My daughter checked her phone, looked bored with the formalities, just wanted the bottom line, wanted confirmation that she was now worth almost $200 million. Her husband was already calculating in his head. I could see it on his face, see him planning purchases, see him imagining his new life. They were both so sure, so confident, so absolutely certain that everything was theirs. And that made what was about to happen so much better, so much more devastating. Because they had no idea, no clue what was coming, no warning that their entire world was about to collapse. My attorney looked up from the papers, looked directly at my daughter, and said, let's begin with the estate distribution. My daughter sat up straight. This was it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. The moment she'd been counting down to since I got sick. Maybe even before that. Maybe she'd been waiting for this her whole life. And now it was finally here. Or so she thought. My attorney pulled out a separate file from the bottom of his briefcase, a sealed file with my handwriting on it. My daughter noticed it but didn't think anything of it, just watched as he opened it carefully. Inside was my revised will, the one I signed in the hospital 3 weeks before I supposedly died, the one she knew nothing about. He pulled out the document, multiple pages, all stamped and notarized and witnessed, legal and binding and final. He cleared his throat again, and then he started reading. He read the standard opening, my name, my date of death, the total value of my estate, $185 million in assets. My daughter was smiling, nodding along. Her husband had his phone out ready to take notes, ready to write down account numbers probably. Then my attorney got to the distribution section, the part where he lists who gets what, the part my daughter was waiting for. And his voice didn't change, didn't hesitate. Just read it exactly as written. The estate of $185 million is to be divided as follows. To my daughter, $0, 0 cents. My daughter's smile froze. She blinked, looked confused, like she misheard. Her husband stopped scrolling on his phone, looked up. My attorney continued reading. The full amount of $185 million shall be distributed to the following charitable organizations. $50 million to the American Cancer Society for Pancreatic Cancer Research, $50 million to the National Network to End Domestic Violence for Women's Shelters and Support Programs, $50 million to the United Negro College Fund for Scholarships for Underprivileged Students. The remaining $35 million to be split equally among various other charitable organizations as listed in Appendix A. My daughter's face went white. Actually white. Like all the blood drained out. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at her husband. He looked just as shocked, just as frozen. My attorney kept reading. Didn't stop. Didn't give them time to process. Just continued with the legal language. The will states clearly that the daughter is to receive no inheritance, no assets, no accounts, no property, no stock in the company, no trust fund, no emergency funds, nothing. Everything goes to charity. Everything I built, everything I owned, Everything they thought was theirs. Gone. My daughter found her voice. Started screaming. Actually screaming. Said, "This is wrong. This is a mistake. There's no way. My mother wouldn't do this. She left everything to me. I'm her only child, her only family. This has to be fake. You made this up. You're stealing from me." Her husband joined in. Said they would sue. Said they would contest this. Said there was no way this would hold up in court. My attorney stayed calm. Said the will was properly executed. Signed by me. Notarized. Witnessed by 2 independent parties. Filed with the court. Completely legal. Completely valid. Completely final. My daughter stood up. Knocked her chair backwards. Said, "I don't believe this. Show me proof. Show me her signature." My attorney turned the will around. Showed her the signature page. My handwriting. Clear as day. My signature. The date. 3 weeks before I supposedly died. The notary stamp. The witness signatures. Everything official. Everything real. My daughter grabbed the paper. Stared at it. Her hands were shaking. Her face was red now. Red with rage. Red with disbelief. She said this can't be real. She was sick. She was on drugs. She wasn't in her right mind. You took advantage of her. My attorney said I was evaluated by 2 independent doctors before signing. Both confirmed I was mentally competent. Both confirmed I understood what I was doing. Both signed affidavits stating I was of sound mind. Those documents are also in the file, also filed with the court. My daughter threw the papers on the desk, started pacing. Her husband was frozen, just sitting there staring at nothing, watching his future disappear, watching the beach houses and the cars and the luxury life vanish like smoke. My attorney picked up another document, said there's more, there's a personal letter. From your mother, to you. Would you like me to read it, or would you prefer to read it yourself? My daughter grabbed the letter from my attorney's hand, ripped the envelope open. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost tore the paper. She read it standing up, read it fast, her eyes moving across the lines. And I wish I could have seen her face. Wish I could have watched her read every word I wrote, every truth I told her, every piece of disappointment and anger and pain I put on that page. Her face went from white to red to purple. Her jaw clenched. Tears formed in her eyes, but not sad tears. Angry tears. Rage tears. She finished reading and crumpled the letter in her fist. Threw it at my attorney. Started screaming again. Screaming that I was a monster, that I was cruel, that I was vindictive, that I ruined her life. Her husband picked up the letter, smoothed it out, read it himself. His face went pale too. He put the letter down and just sat there, defeated, destroyed. My attorney sat calmly, hands folded, waiting for them to finish their tantrum, waiting for reality to sink in. My daughter said she would fight this, said she would hire lawyers, said she would prove I was mentally incompetent, said she would drag this through court for years. My attorney said she was welcome to try, said she could hire every lawyer in the country, and it wouldn't matter. The will was perfect, airtight, no grounds to contest. He had made sure of it, spent weeks making sure of it. Every possible loophole closed, every possible challenge anticipated. She had no case, no chance, no hope. Her husband finally spoke, asked if there was anything at all, any accounts they missed, any assets not listed. My attorney said no. Everything was accounted for. The house I owned, sold, proceeds going to charity. My cars, sold, proceeds going to charity. My jewelry, auctioned, proceeds going to charity. My stock in the company, transferred to a foundation. My bank accounts, emptied and distributed. There was nothing left, nothing with her name on it, nothing she could touch. I made sure every single dollar went somewhere she couldn't reach it. My daughter collapsed into her chair, put her face in her hands, started crying. Real crying this time. Not fake funeral tears. Real sobs. Because she finally understood, finally realized what this meant. She lost everything, everything she planned, everything she counted on, everything she celebrated. Gone. Her husband put his arm around her, but she shoved him away, screamed at him, said this was his fault, Said he told her not to visit me more. Said he told her the money was guaranteed. Said he spent money they didn't have because he was so sure. Now what? Now what were they supposed to do? He didn't answer. Just sat there looking sick, looking like he wanted to disappear. My attorney pulled out more papers. Said there were debts to settle. Said my daughter had credit cards in my name. Said there were charges made in the last 3 months. Charges for luxury items, vacations, designer clothes, over $200,000 in charges. He said those debts would need to be paid by her since she made the charges. Since the estate was going to charity, it wouldn't cover her personal spending. She would be responsible. My daughter looked up, eyes red, face swollen. Said she didn't have that kind of money. Said she thought she was inheriting millions. Said she spent money because she thought it was coming. My attorney said that wasn't the estate's problem. That was her problem. She needed to figure out how to pay it back, sell her house maybe, sell her cars, sell her designer clothes, whatever it took. But those debts were hers. Not mine. Not the estate's. Hers. Her husband stood up. Said they needed to leave. Needed to talk to their own lawyer. My attorney said that was fine. Said all the documents would be filed with the court by end of day. Said the charities would be notified. Said the transfers would begin immediately. My daughter stood up, looked at my attorney with pure hatred. Said my mother was a vindictive bitch. Said she was glad I was dead. My attorney didn't react, just said the meeting was over, showed them to the door, and they left with nothing. Exactly what they deserved. The letter I wrote to my daughter was short, 1 page, but every word was a knife, every sentence designed to cut deep. My attorney handed it to her at the meeting, but she threw it away in her rage. But I made copies, lots of copies, sent one to her house, sent one to her email, made sure she couldn't avoid it, made sure she would read it again when she calmed down, when the shock wore off, when she had time to really think about what she lost. And this is what I wrote. To my daughter. You are reading this because I am dead, and you just learned you inherited nothing. I know you are angry. I know you feel cheated. But you need to understand why. You need to hear the truth, even if you don't want to. I heard you that night in the hospital hallway. Heard you on the phone laughing. Heard you say mom's finally dying. Heard you say 185 million is mine. Heard you say you were done pretending to care. Those words destroyed me, not the cancer, not the pain. Your words, your cruelty, your complete lack of love. I spent 40 years building wealth for you, gave you everything, private schools, designer clothes, cars, credit cards, apartments, trips. I worked myself to exhaustion so you could have comfort, so you could have security, so you could have opportunities I never had. And you repaid me with coldness, with greed, with counting down the days until I died, so you could have my money. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you, and when I had nothing left to give but my last breaths, you celebrated. You are not a good person. You are selfish and entitled and cruel. You treat people like objects. You think money makes you special. But you earned nothing, built nothing, contributed nothing. You are just a spoiled child in an adult body spending money you didn't make. I am ashamed I raised you. Ashamed I created someone so empty, so heartless, so greedy. I failed as a mother, but you failed as a daughter, failed as a human being. So I gave my money to people who deserve it, people who will use it to help others, to save lives, to create opportunities, to make the world better. Cancer researchers who work to cure the disease that killed me. Women's shelters that help abuse victims escape and rebuild. Scholarship funds that help poor kids get education and rise above poverty. These strangers have more character in their little finger than you have in your entire body. They deserve my money. You deserve nothing. You will have to work now. Have to earn your own money. Have to live within your means. Have to face the real world. The world I faced. The world I survived. The world I conquered. And I doubt you will succeed. You have no skills, no work ethic, no humility. You will probably fail. Probably end up bitter and angry. Probably blame me for the rest of your life. But that's not my problem anymore. I'm dead. And you are alone with your greed and your empty heart. I hope you learn from this. Hope you realize that love cannot be bought. That family is more than money. That character matters more than bank accounts. But I doubt you will. People like you never change, never learn, never grow. You will just find someone else to use, someone else to manipulate, someone else to take from, and I feel sorry for whoever that is. You called yourself my daughter. But daughters love their mothers. Daughters care when their mothers are dying. Daughters grieve. You did none of those things. You are not my daughter. You are a stranger who shares my DNA. A mistake I made. A lesson I learned too late. And my final act was making sure you never profited from my death. Making sure my legacy helped people instead of funding your shallow, meaningless life. You inherit nothing. You deserve nothing. And I hope every time you think about me, you remember this moment. Remember that your greed cost you everything. Remember that I saw who you really were, and I rejected you completely. Goodbye forever, Mom. That letter was my final message to her, my final truth. And I meant every single word. But there was one more truth she didn't know yet. My daughter left that attorney's office destroyed. But I wasn't done. I wanted her to sit with that pain, that loss, that realization of what her greed cost her. So I waited. Waited 3 months while she tried to contest the will. While she hired lawyers. While she spent money she didn't have fighting a battle she couldn't win. While her marriage fell apart. While her life crumbled. And when she hit rock bottom. When she lost everything. That's when I came back. I walked into my attorney's office unannounced one Tuesday afternoon. My daughter was there for another futile meeting about the will. Another desperate attempt to find a loophole. She looked terrible. Hadn't slept. Hair unwashed. Expensive clothes replaced with normal ones. The luxury stripped away. She was arguing with my attorney. Voice hoarse from crying and screaming. And then she saw me. Standing in the doorway. Alive. Her face went through every emotion in seconds. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Then understanding. Then pure rage. She stood up so fast her chair fell backwards, started screaming. You're alive. You're alive. This was all fake. The funeral was fake. You've been alive this whole time. Her hands were shaking, her voice breaking. My attorney stood calmly. Said yes, your mother is alive. The cancer went into complete remission. We staged her death to show you exactly who you are. My daughter's face crumpled. She looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Not love, but recognition. Recognition that she'd been caught. That everything she did, everything she said, everything she planned, I knew about it all. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. What could she say? How could she defend celebrating my death, planning how to spend my money while I lay dying, treating me like an ATM instead of a mother? I walked into the room, stood in front of her, and I said everything I'd been holding inside. I'm alive, and you're going to have to live with what you did, with who you are. You don't get my money, you never did, but now you also don't get to pretend I died without knowing the truth. You have to face me. Face the mother you threw away for money you never got. Face the fact that your greed destroyed everything. She started crying. Real tears this time. Said she was sorry. Said she didn't mean it. Said she would change. But I knew better. I'd heard those words before. Empty words. Desperate words. Words meant to manipulate. To get what she wanted. I shook my head. Said it's too late for sorry. The will stands. The charities get the money. You get nothing. But now you get to live knowing I'm out here somewhere. Knowing I saw everything. Knowing I chose to give my fortune away rather than let you have a single dollar. My attorney handed her one more document, a restraining order. She was not allowed to contact me, not allowed to come near me, not allowed in my life ever again. I was legally cutting her off completely. She looked at the paper, looked at me, and something in her broke. The last piece of hope, the last shred of the daughter I tried to raise. Gone. She crumpled to the floor, sobbing, begging. But I turned around, walked out of that office, and never looked back. I'm still alive, living quietly in another state. My cancer is in remission. I'm healthy, happy even. I volunteer at women's shelters. help with college scholarship applications, work with cancer research foundations. My money is doing good, real good, changing lives, saving lives, creating opportunities, everything I wanted it to do, everything it never would have done in my daughter's hands. My daughter's life fell apart completely after I revealed I was alive. Her husband left her the next day, said he couldn't look at her, couldn't be married to someone so heartless. The story got out. People in our social circle found out what she did, found out she celebrated my death, found out about the hospital hallway conversation. Her reputation was destroyed. Nobody wanted to associate with her. Nobody wanted to be friends with the woman who was so terrible her mother faked her own death just to teach her a lesson. She had to file bankruptcy, had to sell everything, the house, the cars, the designer clothes, everything she valued, everything that made her feel special. Gone. She moved into a small apartment, got a job at a retail store, had to work for the first time in her life, had to serve customers, had to hear no instead of yes, had to experience what normal people experience, what I experienced when I built myself up from nothing. She tried to reach out multiple times, sent letters, sent emails, tried to call. But the restraining order held. My attorney made sure of it. She wrote that she understood now, that she was sorry, that she wanted another chance. But I didn't respond, didn't read past the first line, because I knew the truth. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. Sorry she lost the money. Sorry her comfortable life disappeared. Not sorry for being cruel to her dying mother. The charities I donated to have done incredible work. The cancer research funded by my donation has led to new treatments, better survival rates. The women's shelters have expanded, helped thousands of women escape abuse, start over, build new lives. The scholarships have sent hundreds of poor kids to college, given them opportunities they never would have had. My money is creating legacy, real legacy, not the empty Instagram posts my daughter would have made. I'm 70 years old now, alive and well, and every day I wake up grateful I survived, grateful I got to see my money go to people who deserve it, grateful I got to watch my daughter learn the hardest lesson of her life, that love cannot be bought, that family is more than money, that character matters, that actions have consequences. She lost everything because of her greed, because of her cruelty, because she celebrated her mother's death for an inheritance. She laughed at my bedside, said Mom's $185 million is mine, celebrated before I even died. But when that attorney opened the file, she learned the truth. The money was never hers, would never be hers. And now she has to live knowing her mother chose strangers over her own daughter. Chose to fake death rather than reward cruelty. Chose justice over family. And the greatest twist of all, I came back. Came back to watch her face the consequences, to make sure she knew that a mother's love has limits, and she crossed every single one.